Welcome to the Art of Conscious Living. I have a very special guest today, Anne Watts. She's the daughter of Alan Watts, a prolific, incredible writer from the 60s, 70s. And I'm so happy and pleased to have her in the studio today. Thank you, Anne.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm great.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah.
Beautiful.
How are you today?
I'm just wonderful.
Good.
I'm feeling great.
Good. Yeah.
So let's start at the very beginning. You come from a family of quite a number of siblings. You have 5 girls and there was 2 boys. And your father is very well known. And essentially, what was it like growing up? That would be my first burning question of what it was like to have a father. And the world knows him as Alan Watts, but you knew him as father.
Yeah. Well, what it was like was different, really, than a lot of people. It wasn't a Leave It to Beaver kind of family situation. My father was married to my mother, and I have an older sister, and then myself, and then they divorced. And he had 5 more children with his second wife, Dorothy. And I lived with my mother for a while, and then I went and lived with my father and my stepmother. And it was challenging. It was a challenging experience. I didn't get along that well with my stepmother. I had a stomach ulcer when I was the age of 10. And my grandparents came to visit from England, my father's parents, and worked it out so that I could come and live with them in England and go to girls' boarding school, which was really a good thing for me. In terms of living with Alan, there were lots of great things about it. He's, fun, playful, creative, all of that, and he was often an absentee father. He traveled quite a bit. He'd be off writing and doing his writing and very focused when he was writing. And so there were lots of ways in which he wasn't available, and in the ways that he was available. We always had a good time, and I felt very connected to him.
So as you became older, were you at one point in time aware of how well known he was via his books?
Well, for a long time, when I was little, I wasn't that aware, but we always had interesting people coming to our home, well-known people, and
Ginsberg.
And Ginsberg, just right now I'm blanking. Margaret Mead was one, and lots of people who would come that were well-known at the time. Ginsberg was more later. But there were always people of different cultures, from Japan, China, India. People like that were drawn to my dad, and students of his, interestingly, that he was teaching about Eastern religion and philosophy. I think he had as many Asian students as he had Western students. So there was always that kind of interesting flavor in the home. And then when I was 11, I was gone, and I was gone for 5 or 6 years. And then when I came back, one time I was visiting. I was a teenager, and we were at an event where my father was presenting, and a woman came up and asked if she could touch me. And it was for me after that I stopped telling people who my dad was. It was like, there's this aspect of, ooh, your father's Alan Watts, ooh, and it was like, I want to be seen for myself, not for who my dad is, right? And it felt like people would put this overlay of him on me. And so, so there was that kind of weirdness about being the child of a well-known person. And on the other hand, I'm a pretty public figure these days myself, and people come up to me often if they know who my dad was, if they figure it out or whatever, because I don't usually announce it. But people will come up and say that reading his books or listening to him changed their lives. And I'm always touched by that. I just think that's a lovely thing. And so, I'm happy. I'm happy about that part. And I currently teach at Esalen, and my dad was involved in Michael Murphy turning it into Esalen, and so he was very involved there for a long time. And I never expected myself to be someone who was a leader in front of groups, because I'm very much of an introvert, actually. And I certainly never imagined myself teaching at Esalen. So it's really quite an interesting thing to be there. And when I'm at Esalen, I do in fact I talk about my dad, because they've got an Alan Watts room there. It's in a lot of the rooms there. Aldous Huxley was a close friend of my dad's. Henry Miller was a close friend of my dad's. All these people. They've got this room, the Charlotte Silver room, and all of that, and it's all people that I grew up with. So
Alan was a great pioneer, actually. He was up to 25 books that he wrote. It was bridging the Eastern and the Western philosophy and the religion and a lot of Buddhism. Mm-hmm. And his books were basically bringing to America, where nobody was really doing this at that point in time. Mm-hmm. I remember being 12 years old myself, and I was just totally, I couldn't get enough of his books. Wow. Every book, I was waiting to read the next one. Wow. And embrace it. And it was basically opening up a consciousness within me that there's something more than what is happening. Mm-hmm. And it was certainly the times. I mean, the 60s and the 70s, it was, everything was happening at that time. Everything was being cultivated and expressed. Yeah.
It's fun. My grandmother, my dad's mother, taught in a girls' boarding school for the daughters of missionaries. And the missionaries would come back from Asia and give my grandmother gifts. So she had these large vases that had Chinese drawings on them. And my dad was fascinated by those as a little boy. And that was the thing that got him interested in Asian culture and philosophy and all of that. It's kind of, and he actually thought he was going to be an artist, because he was really a good artist. And
what kind of artist?
Painting.
A painter.
Yeah. And he was fascinated by calligraphy, and he used to do, now I can't even remember what you call it, but gilt, that kind of thing. And he loved doing that kind of stuff. So,
what is your all-time favorite book that Alan?
I don't have an all-time favorite because I don't read his books. I've tried to read his books, and I cannot. So I've lived with his philosophies. I used to listen to him lecture and stuff like that, and loved that. But I've never been able to read his books. I asked him once.
What do you think that is? What's going on there?
You know what? For me, it's I don't know. There's something about his writing that I think it just has me so much in my head, and it's not where I live my life. So it's I've never really gotten very far reading, and maybe it's because also a lot of it is just I've already heard it. I grew up with it. I love watching him. I love watching the videos and stuff, and I love a lot of what he taught. I thought it was amazing, and I was thinking one of my favorite videos of his is Work as Play, and and the whole idea of making what you're doing fun, cleaning the toilet or washing the dishes, or doing the things you have to do anyway, rather than making it drudgery, make it fun. And that's right in line with my personal philosophy.
Right, bringing a goodness, a playfulness to it,
yeah,
instead of a drudgery to it.
Right, because it so greatly improves the quality of life. You know, like if I'm thinking how much fun this is, I'm having fun and I'm feeling good, and rather than feeling dragged down by it, right? And so it's a philosophy that's always been near and dear to me. Yeah.
So when we look back at the 60s and 70s, I mean, there's just your father, Alan Watts, that basically defined that culture from his writings. Is there anybody else that would be notable?
Well,
they perhaps are similar, but not exactly what he was doing.
Right.
There was Howard Vernon.
There's Ram Dass and
Yes.
Timothy Leary. They were really good friends of my dad's, and so and Allen Ginsberg and Gary Snyder, and you know, all those people were people that he hung out with and played with and talked with.
And the playing was that there was the psychedelic experimentation.
There was that.
Opening up the consciousness.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Did he ever talk to you about this at any point in time?
Oh, yeah.
On a one-to-one?
Oh yeah, we shared experiences. You know, we shared LSD experiences together, and you know, what was really beautiful for me was that he was very responsible about those types of experiences, and I remember a really beautiful time when we were on an LSD trip together, and he came up to me. This is way back in my 20s, and I'm now in my 70s. So he came up to me and he said, "Where are you?" And I began to tell him where I was, and I was underwater at that moment. And I felt him actually be there with me. And it was very real and very alive and it's the kind of person he was, you know. And so I have an appreciation for that. It's you know, it was an interesting kind of blossoming time in my life. Yeah.
And what was his consciousness about? How did you experience it? Of the taking of the LSD? Did it hinder you? Did it help you? Was it beneficial?
For me, it was beautiful. It was a lovely place to be in that sort of altered state of consciousness, and you know, like one of the things that I could feel was that feeling of not knowing the difference between the outside and my own skin, you know, like that kind of, all of that kind of disappeared, and all sensations were heightened. So it was beautiful, but it wasn't something that I was in any way attached to. I did a few journeys, and then I didn't anymore, and it's never been something that's been a big part of my life. So, you know.
Do you think it contributed to your consciousness of opening it?
It's possible. It's possible that it did. You know, I mean, I'm very in tune with my own experience of many. How do I want to say this? I feel like there's not firm lines between myself and you or the chair or whatever else, you know, that I feel that there's a spaciousness. It's like I count on the chair to hold me, but I also know that there's more to the chair than that, right? It's that kind of thing.
So there's a spaciousness and openness.
Right, yeah.
And do you think you would have felt this today without that few experiences that you had?
Maybe not quite the same. Maybe not quite the same. You know, I think that my dad had, it's the kind of thing that was part of his philosophy before he ever tripped. And so I think it expanded that for him. And John Lilly, that was another one of his really big friends. They were John Lilly. You're not aware of him?
No. Who is it?
He wrote. He did a lot of study with dolphins and stuff like that, and wrote about consciousness. And he and my father were astrological twins, and very close to each other.
What sign was he?
My dad was a Capricorn.
Capricorn.
Yeah, January 6th. Yeah.
So very methodical and thinking. And action.
And he had like a photographic memory, like he could read things and absolutely remember them. So, yeah. And he was very psychic, very in tune, and you know, there was just. I'm sorry he died so young.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's get to that. He spent a lot of time on his houseboat in Sausalito, and then he had a cabin on Mount Tamalpais.
Yeah.
So he went
up
back and
above
forth.
Muir Woods.
Above Muir Woods.
Well, really, he ended up living up there. He got off the ferry boat eventually, and someone else took it over from him, and so then he lived mostly up at what they call Druid Heights, and I believe that the Park Service takes people there sometimes to visit that place, because it was a whole community that lived up there, and Elsa Gidlow and Roger Summers and Ed Stiles, and they all had a community up there, and it was a great group of people, you know. It was a lot. It was that era, the era of the '60s. You know, it was a great place, and that's where he died.
He died at which age?
He died when he was 58.
58.
Yeah, in his sleep.
Yeah. Peacefully in his sleep.
Yeah. So and you know, for me, it's like I feel the loss of my children being able to get to know him more, and you know, that kind of thing. So, in actual fact, both of my parents died really young. Yeah. So.
Your mother?
My mother died when she was 58 as well. So.
Oh, she did.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And both my parents were serious alcoholics, so that was another part of all that. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Where do you think the alcohol played into all of this? I mean, it doesn't really go hand in hand with the drug taking, does it? Because the drug is more conscious and opening, and the alcohol is more self-depreciating and more negative.
Well, I think not so much for my dad. I think what happened for him was that he said to my sister one time, "I like myself better when I'm drinking."
That's a very profound statement.
It is. And I didn't hear about that until after he died, and certainly if he were alive today, I would ask him about that. You know, that would be.
What do you think he meant by that, Anne?
What that I'm curious about. I really don't know. And you know, I think
perhaps it just made the edges a little bit softer.
Yeah. And I mean, he drank a lot. And he could give a lecture really drunk. He'd go and he'd give a great lecture, and then, you know, he had somebody, towards the end of his life, he had somebody else driving for him, because he didn't want to...
And nobody would know how drunk he was.
Right. Well, they might see him be a little sloppy until he was on, and when he was on, you know, and then when he was off, that was it.
Amazing.
So, yeah, it was amazing. Another, he worked with this wonderful man, Chinese man, Al Huang, who teaches at Esalen, and he's a Tai Chi master. And he and my dad did a lot of lectures and things together, and he finished my dad's last book, and yeah, so lovely man that he worked and played with. You know.
When did your father start writing these books?
He wrote his first book when he was 15. And the Royal Buddhist Society of London invited him to come and speak based on the book. And in walked this schoolboy, much to their shock.
He was how old?
15.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's when he started writing. And
where did he got all this information from at 15?
Well, he was just, you know, he was a prolific student. And this was his area of interest. And so, you know, that was his gift. And it was a gift, you know. I really feel like it was a gift. And, yeah, so that's when he started, and he became a regular member of the Buddhist Society, and the Christmas Humphreys, who was the head of the society at the time, took him under his wing, and they formed a really good relationship. And that's where my mother's mother, Ruth Fuller Sasaki, was the first woman and the first foreigner accepted into the Zen priesthood in Japan. And so that hadn't happened yet, but she was very interested in Buddhism, and so she and my mother were in London, and they went to the Royal Buddhist Society there, and that's where my mother and father met.
Lovely.
Yeah, so.
So he was a very devout Buddhist, practicing all the time?
No.
Was he?
No, not at all.
No.
He loved the philosophies, was interested in it, practiced occasionally. I mean, you know, he was never, no, he wasn't a serious follower. He wasn't a practitioner. And, he wasn't a practitioner of anything, really. But he loved to bring knowledge in and then put it out there. He was really, really good at that.
So he was good at experimenting, experiential, and sampling a lot of things, and then projecting it to others.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
So your work today that you're doing, it's, well, let's talk about it. What is your schedule?
So,
you're going to be at Esalen and different places?
Yep, I am. So I do a lot of work with healing the inner child. I certainly had to heal my inner child. And so I have a workshop called Reclaiming Your Authentic Self, which is a 5-day workshop that I do at Esalen every year. And I have one coming up August 4th to 9th. So it's limited to 10 participants because we go really, really deep. And 10 participants is really the right number for that workshop.
And what methodology do you use?
A lot of different things, a variety of different things, because it's my experience that different things act in different ways and for different people. And so there's visualization, there's talking, there's sharing, there's individual work, paired work, small group work, all of that kind of thing. And
held in a very safe container.
And very safe container, yeah. And so it's really a beautiful experience. People love it, and a lot of healing, yeah. And then I'm doing a workshop, Maturing as an Art Form, and I'm doing it in Boston, June 21st to 23rd in New England, and it's really, again, it's about I got so tired of hearing people complain about getting older. And I'm really about, let's enjoy it. You know, it's kind of like my dad's thing about work as play, and for me, it's aging as play, and it's like you know, like learning to love our wrinkles, learning to love our graying hair, learning to love ourselves as we are. I have 2 new knees. You know, it's like I need glasses to read and all of that stuff. And rather than bemoaning it and groaning about it and trying to pretend it's not happening, learning how to embrace it, right? And a part of it is saying goodbye to some of the things, you know, that abilities that we lose, or body parts that we lose, or friends that we lose because of the age that we are. More and more of our friends die, and so it's about learning to embrace all of that. So that's another piece. And then the biggest thing that I do is working for the Human Awareness Institute, and really that work, and I've been working for them since 1985. Teaching workshops with them, and it's about living life in love, really. And the workshops are called Love, Intimacy, and Sexuality, and it's about embracing ourselves as human beings, all of ourselves, and learning to be compassionate and understanding with ourselves and others. A lot about communication and nurturing touch that's not about sex, because humans crave for touch and often go to sex because it's the only way they know how to get touch, and then hurt themselves, right? Because they don't know that they can touch and be touched and not have sex. So it's, you know, a lot about that. And I just want to say that there is a free mini workshop in Kotati, which is not too far from Marin, on May 23rd. And if you want to find out anything about the Human Awareness Institute, go to hi.org. If you want to find out about my work, you can go to annwatts.com and find out about any of these workshops at annwatts.com. So thanks for letting me.
Let's return back.
Sure.
Oh, you're very welcome. Let's return back to your family. You have sisters and 2 brothers. What are they doing at this time in their life? The one brother is taking care of the archives.
Right,
the father.
right. And to tell you the truth, my older sister and I are quite close, and then I have a half brother that has the same mother and a different father. So that's a 3rd brother in my life. And he lives near Denver and is a photographer and a teacher out there. And then the other 5, Tia, Mark, Ricky, Leela, and Diane. Tia is she's up in Sonoma County, and she teaches at the Sonoma College. And she and I have been connecting and making friends with each other, and that's been very sweet. And Mark is in Marin, and he has the archives. I'm not sure where Ricky is. And Leela and Diane are on the east. I think they're in Pennsylvania. And and I don't really know a lot about them.
You don't have family get-togethers?
No. You know, we were never close as a family. We were all, like, my sister went away. She was sent to boarding school. Then I went away. And, you know, we were all kind of, I didn't grow up with my siblings. Although I had all these siblings, a lot of my life was more like an only child than it was, and I think it's true for my older sister, Joan, as well, that a lot of our experience was more like being only children. I know that Tia, Mark, Ricky, Leela, and Diane are all pretty close and stay connected. And Joan and I stay connected to some degree, and Michael and I, and as I say, I'm building a relationship with my sister Tia, which is which is really sweet. And, but it's all kind of new and yeah.
Where do you think we are today? From the 60s, the revolution and the energy and the times, and the 70s?
I think we're ready for that again.
Really?
How
so? What should take place today?
There's so many great things about the age of where our technology is and all of that, but there's a lot that's really, I think, dehumanizing about it all. And so I think, like I watch young people and they're texting all the time. And I can watch people in a group texting each other. They're not talking to each other, they're texting each other. And it's like they're so much using the social media as a form of communication. And the communication gets cut down into these little, I used to teach the deaf, how are you? Like everything is just like that.
Yeah, quick sound bites.
Yeah,
and reality is condensed down to the minute, quick.
Right.
Really, there's really not much essence there.
Right. And so people are separated a lot, and they're communicating in those ways. And so the work that we do at the Human Awareness Institute is that we're bringing people together human to human, and incorporating nurturing touch and really communicating with each other at the deepest levels. And people discover in one weekend they can be closer to people that they've just met than they are to people they've known all their lives. I just led a workshop called Pathways to Intimacy at Esalen, and some of the people said that to me, like, wow, it's amazing what's possible. But doing it through social media is absolutely not it. And we need to learn to put our social media aside and have times for that, and use it in a way that's useful and not have it stop us from being together one-on-one, from really making eye contact and having physical contact that's nurturing and loving and consensual, appropriate to the relationship, all those things. They're important.
I think the ideal would be to use the social media to connect with people and meet people, and then to pick up the human touch and the contact at that point in time.
Right. Not actually meet.
Not to stay with the social media.
Right. Yeah.
And never meet that person.
Yeah. But it's like I've seen couples sitting there and they're playing games, I don't know, Words with Friends or whatever, and they're playing the game with each other, but they're doing it through their phone rather than looking at each other in the eyes and really being with each other. And, I think it's so important for us to learn to appreciate each other and to give each other appreciations and compliments on a regular basis, and to be in gratitude for each other, because we never know when we're not going to be together anymore. We don't know. Oklahoma is an example of when things can change just like that in seconds. And the silver lining to what's just happened in Oklahoma is that people for a moment remember how precious life is, and really be there for one another. And I wish that we had that connection more, that we really more often were in our hearts with each other and loving each other and finding ways to be there for one another, rather than, we're rushing from one thing to the next, and, it's do instead of be. And that's, Timothy Leary, but way back when, be here now, it's like, yeah, let's be here now. Let's really be here. So, it's like taking a moment to just be here with you and feeling the appreciation of that. And
if it continues at the rate and the pace that it's going, what kind of world shall it be in the next 10 years? What could be the best case or worst case scenario?
Well, it's possible that we'll end up in a revolution or an explosion of some kind, and then we'll be back to basics.
So it takes something catastrophic to happen for it to correct itself.
I think. We seem to just get further and further away from our humanness and our humanity.
Such as 50 years ago, it was the Second World War and the German occupation and Auschwitz.
Right.
And then the world corrected itself from that.
Yeah. And now it's so interesting because in some sense you can see, like, if you even are aware of things that Plato said way back when, and Socrates, we really haven't changed as a species. We keep recycling over and over. And it's like, do we ever really learn? It seems like not really,
Yes.
And
Socrates and Plato was saying that until you've learned from humanity, you're from the past, then you're doomed to repeat it over and over.
Right.
And it seems like that's what we are doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why is that? Is it, in my thinking, is it's the consciousness or the lack of the consciousness of the individuals?
That's it. And that's what I love about your title here, The Art of Living Consciously, because I think most people don't live consciously most of the time. We just do what we do, and it's unconscious, and we don't even think about it. And I think making conscious choices. Who do I want to be? How do I want to be?
What do I want to be? And what's going on in this
Who do I
moment?
choose to be? And, it's like life happens, and then how do I want to respond to life? How do I want to respond? Do I want to, scream and yell and get all upset, or do I want to be like, oh, okay, isn't that interesting? That happened. Okay, now what? And sometimes I'll scream and yell at the computer. But most of the time, I choose to be love and to live in my heart.
Yes.
And to be communicating with people and tuning in and paying attention. And I'm a great proponent of that, and I feel like right now we're living in a highly polarized culture. And so it's going to be really interesting to see.
Polarized to what sense?
Well, polarized, for instance, like there's this movement to really take away women's rights, to ban abortion, to ban this, to ban that, to get very rigid control over people. And then there's the opposite, where there are people who are wanting to be more accepting of people, and accepting of people like gays getting married, or people of different sexual orientation, and transsexuals and people like that, accepting of them instead of shaming them and barring them in some way and saying there's something bad and wrong with you. Getting that, wait, maybe this is just how people are, and why don't we be more loving and accepting of each other? And they're not doing anything to hurt somebody, right? But there are people out there with guns and knives who are doing harm.
So 50% of the people are open and want that, and 50% don't want that.
I don't know about 50-50, but
Right.
but I'm just watching this dance, and it feels very polarized to me, more than in my lifetime that I've seen it.
Right. Well, the reason I say 50% is Mick Romney was standing for so much that was what you mentioned,
Right.
Of control and against everything.
Right.
So he had 50% of the vote.
Right.
And then Obama had 50%, even though I think that Obama was run on the hope factor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody signed up for the hope card.
Right.
But I think he's had his incredible challenges to deliver. And he's in his second term here.
Yeah.
But he has, in his own way, like no other president has done before.
I wouldn't wish
There's
it
where
on
that
anybody.
50-50 comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an incredible thing to take on, to be in that role, because it's enormous. It's enormous. It's enormous responsibility, enormous pressure, enormous, dealing with people who are so polarized, as he's dealing with in Washington right now, and trying to. I mean, he's a man who tries to work with consensus. And working with consensus means for him, kind of finding a middle ground and giving up things that he really believes in to kind of try to get somewhere. Wow, it's a difficult dance. It's hard. And, I think it's awfully easy for us to be armchair politicians and point our fingers and all that, but I think it's tough to be in the shoes that he's in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to the individual waking up and being of conscious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's where the answer really lies. And I think it's the only answer.
Right.
The more people that come into their own consciousness, their own awareness, they cannot be controlled then. And they affect the people that they're around. So more people wake up.
Right.
And the wakening up is basically owning your own energy and being aligned with your own energy and being balanced with that, not living outside of yourself. So I think this is what your father's books were about, of connecting to that source energy all the time.
Right. Yeah, really connecting, and one of the things at the Human Awareness Institute, what we teach a lot about is about choice, making conscious choices, right? Choosing who you want to be, how you want to live, choosing how you're going to be with what comes your way, and embracing your feelings, allowing your feelings to be teachers, really being present. It's not about not feeling or, being super detached, but being with your feelings and being connected, connected with self and others. And I think if we're being, my conscious choice is to be love. Why would I want to be anything else, right? Why would I want to be anything else but love?
And what does that mean to you, to be love?
You know how you feel when you're in love? You know how that feels? You've been in love. You've felt that feeling. How does it feel?
Freedom.
Yeah.
Butterflies, excitement, welcoming life, affirming, affirmation and positive.
Yeah. So what if you could be feeling that most of the time in your life? Like that's the state of being that you choose. I feel like whatever I'm doing, whenever I'm leading something, whenever I'm working one-on-one with a client, or whatever I'm doing, that all I'm doing is being love. So I'm loving that person, and I'm just being in my heart with them, right? Hearing them, being present to them, and it's a conscious choice. And having chosen that, then it just becomes what is, right? The more we choose something, the more it just becomes who we are. And so I've found that for myself, that the balloon that I am is fuller and fuller with that experience of love. And I feel like, it's one of those things that if I can do it, anybody can do it. And another thing is having chosen to love myself the way I love others, people that I care about. You know, I find that most of us treat ourselves really differently than we treat the people we care about. We're highly judgmental of ourselves. We're very, and people often say, oh, I love myself, you know, but when it comes down to it, not so much. And you know, when I talk to people about learning to love you, finding the way you feel when you think about somebody you really care about, and then turning that inward and feeling that way about you, so that you treat yourself with the same kind of respect, the same kind of compassion, the same kind of caring that you do somebody else. And in my experience, then I'm much more grounded, much more centered, much more solid because of that. And it's not self-aggrandizement or ego or, you know, better than. It's heartful. It's that heartful space. And that feels so good.
Absolutely.
And it's not a place of fear. It's not, you know, like Jerry John Paulsky said, love is letting go of fear, you know. It's like, yeah, when you're in love, you're not in fear. And so it is a very solid, grounded place to be from. And then it's not about me, it's about you. It's about us. It's about connecting. So.
And then by putting the emphasis on the other person, you're finding out about yourself through that, where it's not so much about your needs.
Right.
It's about connecting to this other person,
right.
and showering them with just an openness and curiosity.
Yeah.
And then henceforth, you're
right.
finding out about all of yourself within that realms.
Yeah. Right on.
My daily mantra is basically, it's not what happens to us, it's what we do with what happens to us.
Right, exactly so.
Most people are locked in the story of what happened, and
right.
period, and that's
right.
the end of it.
Right.
Well, it really starts, life starts really happening after that event.
Yeah. What happened to us is part of what forms us, you know, it's part of the stew, so to speak. But often we get stuck in it. And, you know, if we could learn to just have that as one of the books in the library on the shelf, you know, but we don't have to live out of that. We get to choose the place that we want to live out of. And I think that's what you're saying, you know, that choosing how you want to be rather than being at the effect of your history.
Yes, and being proactive with that.
Right, right.
So knowing that you can
Yeah.
create the life you want.
Right.
That it's not about being victimhood.
Right.
You know, such and such has happened, so therefore
Right.
this is terrible, and that's a
right.
story.
Right.
So it's
right.
about changing that story into what you want.
Right.
You know, I mean, you hear about these people, and you know, I mean, this fashion model, and she dove into the water, and then she was paralyzed because she hit the bottom, and she had all of her career ahead, and today her energy is just, she's paralyzed, she's in a wheelchair. The man that she was supposed to marry at that time, he left her after a year, but then she meets her soulmate after, and she said 3 children with him, and she's just so beautiful, and her spirit,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And she will stay in that state for the rest of her life. But, I mean, she didn't let the story become
Right.
of that. So how many people can do that?
Right. And that's...
And how many people even know they can do something that she's doing?
Exactly.
Like
and
that.
That's the powerful thing, and that's where she gets to be such a great teacher, you know. She gets to be someone that we can all learn something from. And it's the power of choosing. And like you say, people don't always know that they can make that choice. It doesn't even occur to them that they can make that choice. And it's a great thing. I just thought of another story, too, that's a beautiful story. I love this story. You've probably heard it many times. And, you know, because doing what I do and doing what you do, we make a difference to this person or to that person here and there, right? And you look out at the world and you see all the pain and the suffering. And I know people who say, well, you can't make a difference to all that. It's just too much. It's too big. And it reminds me of the starfish story. You know that one?
No.
There's a man walking on the beach, and he sees this little girl, and there are all these starfish that have been washed up on the beach, and they're just there on the beach dying. And there's this little girl, and she picks one up, and she throws it in the ocean. She walks, and she picks another one up, and she throws it in the ocean. And the man says to her, "You can't make a difference to all that. It's just too much." And she picks one up, and she throws it in the ocean. She says, "I made a difference to that one." Like, so what? Like, I can make a difference where I can make a difference. And I think that's another kind of choice that we can make, like to not get overwhelmed by all that's going on, but to make a difference in the moment wherever we can. And that's another kind of choosing to live consciously.
Well, that's very powerful, and I'll have to remind myself of that.
Yeah.
Because there's times where I say, well, I know I've made some difference with people who stop me and they start talking about a certain show, but have I made the biggest difference,
Right.
a lot of difference with many, 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 many
Right.
people?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to remember that and bring myself back to, if I've done one, I've done a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
Anne, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and talk with you.
Thanks.
And what final thoughts do you have for the final moments here that you'd like to share?
Wow. Final thoughts would be, to sum up, you get to choose who you want to be. Who do you want to be? And why not be love? Why would you want to be anything else, right? But to choose to be love, to be that, and be loving with the people that you're around. So give people lots of compliments and appreciations on a daily basis, wherever you are. It makes a difference. It really does make a difference. One kind word can brighten somebody's day immeasurably, and it's well worth it.
Thank you, Anne.
Yeah.
Great pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
And from the Art of Conscious Living, do take care of yourself and take care of others. Thank you.